Hey friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nunches, Daf 58 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, who can tell me what Daf 58 talks about? No? Well, Daf 58 talks about kind of, I guess, a continuation of what we were discussing at the end of the Daf yesterday, which is Yesh Chuppah L'Psulis. Right? Is Chuppah relevant when it comes to Psulis, right? You have these people, right? We discussed yesterday, if you have these people that you are not allowed to get married, right? For example, one second, I gotta fix my chair. Okay, maybe that's better. This is not gonna be good. No way. 1 second. Okay, maybe that's better. If you have like a divorcee who marries a kohen, right? So that's not allowed. So, what if they didn't do kiddushin, but they did chuppah? So, is that going to make her like unable to eat truma, like that kind of stuff? So we discussed that for a bit, and then so that's kind of that's kind of what we talk about for like an amud and a half, and then we talk a little bit more about who kohanes are like allowed to marry. Okay, we're going to start on Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Amar Rami Bar Chama says, Rami Bar Chama Yesh Chuppah L'Psulis, regarding the topic of whether or not there is chuppah when it comes to these psulis, right? So like, let's say you have a divorcee marrying a kohen, so then they didn't do kiddushin, but they did chuppah. They stood under a chuppah canopy or whatever. So is that considered relevant, right? Is that considered a problem? Is she unable to eat the truma? No. So one of the machlokas Reb Meir, Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon. So we get to the machlokas that we have in our Mishnah. Reb Meir on the one hand, and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon on the other. The Reb Meir the Omer kiddushin pasle. So according to Reb Meir, who says that already from kiddushin it's not allowed. So then also in this case when there's chuppah, right? They didn't sleep with each other, right? It was chuppah v'lo nivala, right? They didn't actually sleep together, but they did this chuppah. So then also pasle. Right, so chupanami pasla. So just like Reb Meir would say that already from Erisin, that already from the time that they get engaged, she's not allowed to eat truma. So then also, if they do this chuppah thing, she would be unable to eat truma. The Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, the amrei kiddushin lo pasle. So now according to Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, who say that after that a divorcee, for example, who gets engaged to a kohen, she can eat truma. So they would say chuppah nami lo pasla, that if they do chuppah without kiddushin and without bia, so then it would be okay. She would not be pasul. Now Rashi had said yesterday that what it means pasul is either we're talking about, for example, if you have a bas kohen, daughter of a kohen, who growing up, she was allowed to eat truma, right? She was in a priestly family, she's allowed to eat truma. Now, what we're saying though is that if she was like a divorcee and she marries another kohen, so then so the question is, once she even gets engaged, does she, can she continue to eat truma once she gets engaged to this kohen who she's not allowed to be engaged to? Alternatively, you could be talking about a bas Yisrael who gets engaged to a kohen, right? So let's say it's a bas Yisrael who's a divorcee and she gets engaged to a kohen. So mida oraisa, at least she could technically eat truma, but we're saying, right, mida rabbanon, she doesn't eat truma, but we're saying that even mida oraisa, maybe she would be unable to eat truma if she was a divorcee already after kiddushin. So now, we want to say that this question of chuppah, where there was no kiddushin, but they went straight to chuppah and there was no bia, everyone agrees, of course, that if there was bia, right, that if a divorcee, for example, sleeps with a kohen, then at that point, she's a halala and she'll be unable to eat truma, that's for sure. But what about in this case, where they did chuppah, but no kiddushin and no bia? So we want to say that, well, let's say it's the machlokas between Reb Meir on the one hand and Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar on the other. That Reb Meir says that, well, if you only did kiddushin, so then she would be pasul to eat truma. So the same thing would apply to chuppah. Now, we want to say that Reb Shimon and Reb Elazar, who say that by kiddushin she can eat truma. So then we would say here as well that by chuppah she would be able to eat truma. So now umimai. But how come we want to say that this machlokas that it sort of is the same or lines up? Right? How come we want to say that the machlokas around kiddushin is the same machlokas around chuppah? Dilma, perhaps I'll say, ad kan lo kamer Reb Meir hasam. The only reason why Reb Meir says by kiddushin that she's unable to eat the truma, el b'kiddushin dekanila, because at least he's making a kinyan. There's something, right? He did kiddushin, he made a kinyan. There was a acquisition that happened. Aval chuppah lokana lo. But if you just go straight to chuppah without kiddushin, so then there was never a kinyan. There was never an acquisition, and therefore maybe Reb Meir would say that she could eat truma. There was never a kinyan that transpired between this unallowed, this forbidden relationship. Inami. Alternatively, ad kan lo kamer Elazar Reb Shimon hasam. But maybe the only reason, right, we could say that with regard to Elazar and Reb Shimon, maybe they only say regarding kiddushin that she can continue to eat. That if she's a bas kohen, she can continue. If she's a bas yisrael, then even midoraisa, she's not allowed. Ela b'kiddushin, she is allowed midoraisa, but not midorabanan. Ela b'kiddushin to lo kreve lebia. Yeah, they say that she can eat truma by kiddushin because kiddushin is not bia, right? At least kiddushin of kesef or shtar, right? It's a separate thing. But chuppah, which is very close to bia, right? You do chuppah, then you have bia later. So then, in that case, maybe they would say ochinami de pasta. Maybe in that case, Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon would sing a different tune and say that she's possible from truma. So it's not super clear cut. Rather, if you want to say that it's regarding chuppah, if it's posel by these relationships, so look to the following machlokas tanoim. The Tanya is within the Brayse nisu zovazo ksheris ufsulis o shenichnesu lechipe velo nivalu ochlus mishela v'ochlus betrume. Okay, we have a machlokas. We have a Brayse that says nisu. I'm going to read that again. That if they got married, okay, zovazo ksheris ufsulis, whether we're talking about somebody who a Kohen is allowed to marry, whether we're talking about somebody who a Kohen is not allowed to marry, okay, or they went under the chuppah, the marriage canopy, the wedding canopy, but they never had bia. Okay, ochlus mishalov ochlus betrume. Well, his wife can eat from his finances, from his property, from his possessions. V'ochlus betrume, and she can also eat trume. Nichnasu mechlal de nisu mamish. Now 1 second. So we had said two things in that Brayse. So we said that if they got married, or if they went under the chuppah but didn't have bia, in those cases she's allowed to eat truma. So now 1 second. Does nisu mamish? Does nisu really mean that the mamish got married and had bia the whole thing? Nobody would agree to that. Everyone would agree that if they had bia, she's not allowed to eat truma anymore. She's a halala. So rather, no, the way to understand it is that what it means when it says nisu o shenichnasu lechuppah v'lo nivalu means the definition of what nisu means is that they went to the chuppah v'lo nivalu. V'katani ochlos mishalov ochlos betruma, and still we're saying ochlos mishalov ochlos betruma that she's allowed to eat truma. So according to the Tanakama, it sounds like chuppah, right? Nichnasu lechuppah v'lo nivalu. She's allowed to eat truma. Okay, fine. So we see in that case that chuppah would not be enough to make her possible from eating truma. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer, Kol shebiasa ma'achilasa, chupasa ma'achilasa, that in any situation where if they would have bia, she would be able to eat truma. So then also if there's a chuppah, she's able to eat truma. But Kol she'ein biasa ma'achilasa, ein chupasa ma'achilasa. Whereas Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says that if they would have bia, she would not be able to eat truma, such as in this case, right? A divorcee marrying a kohen, she would be unable to eat truma if they have bia, because she becomes a halala. So then also chuppah is going to have the same result. So we see that according to Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, chuppah is relevant. And therefore she would be unable to eat truma from the time of the chuppah. But mimai, the Gemara says, meh. How come we're assuming that Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is saying that in a situation where there was no kiddushin, but there was chuppah, she would be unable to eat truma? Dilma, maybe what Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is saying is Rav Meir svir le da'amar mi kiddushin lo achla. Maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is saying like Rav Meir, which means that in this brisa we're talking about where there was kiddushin. So Keilu, there was kiddushin, and then they also do chuppah, but they didn't have bia. And in that case, where Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is saying she's not allowed to eat truma, but maybe she's not allowed to eat truma because he holds like Rav Meir that already from the kiddushin that happened, she wasn't able to eat truma. It has nothing to do with the chuppah. Perfecting Gemara, if that was the case, I call shein biyasa ma'ichlasa in chupasa ma'chilasa, call shein biyasa ma'ichlasa in kaspa ma'chilasa. But if that's the case, Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka should not be saying that any situation where bia would make where bia would make her puzzle, so then chuppah makes her puzzle, i.e. he's putting all of his weight behind chuppah. But if what we're saying is true, that it's really not about chuppah, it's about kiddushin, it should say that if when they have bia, she's not able to eat truma, then also the kesef kiddushin would make her unable to eat truma. So Dilma Aidid Amar Tanakama Chippa Amar Ihu Nami Chuppah. No, maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka is saying like Rav Meir that she's passed already from the time of kiddushin, and the chuppah is not actually relevant. And the reason why he mentions chuppah here is only because the Tanakama mentioned chuppah to say that even though there's chuppah, she can continue to eat truma. So he also mentioned chuppah, right? But really, I would argue that Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says that from kiddushin already, she is not going to be able to eat truma. Okay, fine. So it's inconclusive. We tried two examples to say that this machlokas about whether there is chuppah for psulis or not. We tried our hand at two brises first to align it with our Mishnah, and then we brought this brise regarding chuppah with Tanakam and Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and we didn't succeed in sort of aligning the opinions of the Tanoim regarding yesh chuppah lifsulis or not. Says the Gemara, Omer Rav Amram, says Rav Amram, Hamilsa Omer lanu Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes told us the following thing: V'an harinu le'ainin mimasnisin, and he then sort of brought a proof from the following Mishnah in Sota, yesh chuppah lifsulis. So Rav Sheshes says, look, there is chuppah by psulis, and if they have chuppah, then that is already relevant. Okay, vitana tuna, and we have support from the following Mishnah. Omin shelo satisi arusu nesua shemes yom uchnusa. That, right, what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, "Uvaomayim ma'arim va'ele b'me'ayich litzbos batim lampol yorich ve'amra isha amin amin." So it's talking about a sota, right, a woman who was warned by her husband not to be secluded with a certain fellow, and she is secluded with that fellow, and she drinks a special potion, and then she says amin amin, right, and at some point in the process she says amin amin, and we learn out what is this double amin. Well, she's saying shelo satisi aruso nesua shemeres yavim uchnusa, whether I was betrothed, whether I was married, whether I was awaiting yibum, whether I had done yibum, there was no relationship with this fellow whatsoever. I did not have intercourse with this fellow bichlal. Hayarusa echidami. Now the Gemara wants to know, what is the situation of arusa? How can you have a sota who is a betrothed woman? Ilema dekanilak she arusa vinistera. If we're talking about where he warned her when they were engaged. So they were engaged, Mazel Tov, and the engagement got off to a rocky start. He warned her not to be secluded with another fellow, and she was secluded nonetheless with that fellow. And then he brings her to the Beis Hamikdash to drink this potion when she's still betrothed. Arusa bas mishtayehi. But that can't be. Betrothed women don't drink this potion. V'atanam, we learned in the Mishnah, Arusa v'shomeres Yevamos lo shosus v'lo nodlas ksube, that a betrothed woman, as well as a woman awaiting Yibum, right? Reuven died, and Sarah and Shimon didn't yet do Yibum. So lo shosus v'lo nodlas ksube, they don't drink sota waters, and they also don't collect the ksube. Okay? I guess they get divorced or something. So Ela, Dikani law, Kishi Arusa. So rather, what's the situation? So it can't be talking about when he warned her and gave her to drink the potion when she was Arusa, because betrothed women don't drink sota potions. So Ela Dikani law Kishi Arusa, he warned her when she was betrothed. V'istatra, and she secluded herself when she was betrothed. V'kamashki law Kishi Nesua. And then, once they were married, he took her to the Beis Hamikdash to drink the sota potion. But mibadke lomaya. But the sota potion would be ineffective in that case, because, we're assuming that if they got married, then they had intercourse once they got married. Now the thing is, she had already been warned when she was engaged, then secluded herself with this fellow when she was engaged, which means that from the time that she secluded herself with this fellow, he is unable to have intercourse with her. He's unable to sleep with her. And therefore, if they then got married, and only afterwards he brought her to the Beis Hamikdash to drink this potion, the implication is that they had intercourse once they got married, which means that he also did an Avera, and therefore, Ve'atani, we learn in a Braise, V'nika ish me avon, that the fellow will be clean from sin, bisman sha'ish menuka me'avon, and the drasha is that when he's clean from sin, hamayim bod kinasishto, so then the water, the sota potion does its magic and does this check on his wife. But eina ish menuka me'avon, but if this fellow is not clean from sin, if he's also a sinner, eina mayim bod kinasishto, then the sota potion does not work. And therefore, it cannot be talking about a situation where he warned her when she was betrothed and then gave her to drink, and she secluded herself with another fellow, and then he brought her to the Beis Hamikdash to drink the potion when she was already married, because the implication is that they've had intercourse together after she was secluded, in which case he's not particularly clean either. And if he's done Averas, then the water doesn't check, the sota waters don't work. Ella, rather, the kanilak she'arusa, he warned her when she was betrothed, v'istatra, and while she was betrothed, she secluded herself with this fellow, v'nichnesa lechupa v'lo nivala. And then what happened? They got married, they never had intercourse, and then he brings her to the Beis Hamikdash for this potion. So in that case, the warning and the seclusion happened when she was engaged. The drinking is happening when they are married. They never had intercourse together after she was secluded, and therefore he didn't do anything wrong. But vishmamina, and what do we see from there? Yesh chuppah lifsulis, that the chuppah that they did together was relevant. That now that they had chuppah, even though there was no bia, that seems to be relevant to the extent that now she can she could drink the sota waters because they're now married. Rava says, does that really make sense? Is that really a good solution? When Rabbi Acha bar Chanina came from the south, also by he brought with him a braise that the pasuk says, "Mi balade ishech." Right? They say to this woman that you slept with somebody, mi balade, aside from your husband. And the drasha is, mi shekadma shchivas baal leboel, that the husband would have to sleep with his wife before this other fellow sleeps with her. Velo shekadma shchivas boel lebaal, and not that the intercourse with this other fellow happened before, or at least the seclusion with this other fellow happened before. No, I guess in order for her to be checked, it would have to be intercourse. Happened before she had intercourse with her husband. And therefore, that case doesn't work anymore. Meaning, if they got engaged, and the assumption is that when they're engaged, they are not having intercourse. And then he warns her, hey, don't be secluded with this fellow. She secludes herself with this fellow. And then they do chuppah, and they didn't have, and they never had intercourse, and therefore there's not a problem of him doing any sins because he didn't have intercourse after she was secluded. But the fact that they didn't have intercourse also means that this other fellow is sleeping with his wife before he is, and sort of a requirement here is that he has to sleep with her before this other fellow does. So Now we're going to hit problems as well. So it says, well, what if they did have intercourse when they were engaged? And therefore, the sort of order of events was this. They got engaged, they had intercourse. He then warns her, don't be with this other fellow. She is secluded with this other fellow. They then get married. They do not have intercourse once they got married. And then she goes and drinks the chuppah water. So now in this case, not chuppah water, the opposite kind of, the sota water. And in this case, all of our boxes are checked. The warning and the seclusion was when she was engaged. The drinking of the sota waters was when they were married. He slept with her before the other fellow did, but never slept with her after the seclusion. So, all right, what do you want me to tell you? So we want to suggest that in that case, that's what it's talking about in the Brisa when it's talking about arusa. Okay, and it sounds like this would taka be a proof that chuppah is significant. But now says the Gemara, but 1 second, what would the equivalent case now be by a shomeres yavam? Right, we had mentioned in that brisa that when it says amin amin, it's whether she was engaged, whether she was married, whether she was a shomeres yavam, whether she had done yibum. So wouldn't that also have to be talking about a situation shebaleh yavam beveis chamia, where Ruvain dies, and then Shimon has intercourse with Sarah before they do Yibum. But Shomeres Yavam, Karisla Ishtom Ayahi. But that wouldn't be Shomeres Yavam anymore, that would just be his wife, right? If he's doing Yibum, if they're having intercourse, that's Yibum. So the Amar Rav Konalakol, because after all, Rav says that even Bias, Shogeg, Mezid, no matter what it is, Konalakol. Taka makes them married. So, Kishmuel de Amr Lo Kona. Eldvar Mamur Beparsha. So we say, well, it's like Shmuel, who says that when it comes to Shogeg and Mezid, so then they are not married in all respects, only regarding Yerusha, and that she doesn't need to do Yibum anymore, but they're not like Mamish married. Okay, fine. But Frekti Gemara, Midi utaime ela l'Rav, ha'am Rav kon alakol. But 1 second, this is being brought as a proof for Rav. Rav said, what did Rav say? Rav said that yesh chuppah l'psulis, that chuppah is relevant in the context of forbidden relationships, and Rav Sheshes is agreeing with Rav, and he's bringing a proof from this Mishnah of Arusa, Shomeres Yavam, and we're saying that the Arusa is talking about where they had intercourse before marriage, and we want to say the same thing about Shomeres Yavam, and then we ask the Kasha, but if it's a Shomeres Yavam, then wouldn't that mean that she's mamish married? And we say, well, that would only be according to Rav, but this is like Shmuel. How could a proof for Rav not be like him, but rather be like Shmuel who argues on him? If this is a proof for Rav, it's going to have to make sense according to Rav as well. So, Hachav Ma'eskinon, the Gemara answers, well, okay, fine. So here what are we talking about? Kigo into Avad Ba'maimer, by the Shomeres Yavam, it's talking about where Shimon had done Maimer. Okay? Veishamahi, and it's like Veishami de Amre, that they say Maimer Kone Kinyan Gomer. That Maimer makes like a Kinyan Gomer, like a proper Kinyan, and now they are considered engaged. And now once they're considered engaged, he then warns her, don't be with it, right? So he did Maimer with her, now they're considered engaged, and he says, don't be with a certain person. And then afterwards, they do chuppah. Wait, sorry. I'm sorry. The situation of Maimer is talking about where, so she was a Shomeres Yavam, right? She was a Shomeres Yavam, and then he warned her, like, don't be with this fellow, and then she was with this fellow, and then he does Maimer, which is now considered like they are married, and then she drinks the potion, and that would be the situation of Shomeres Yavam that is effective. And the fact that he hadn't slept with her yet was acceptable since she had slept with her previous husband, and that seems to be okay. That seems to be enough. And he doesn't sleep. The Shimon doesn't sleep with her after the seclusion, so it kind of works in that way. But then, Fekti Gemara, Iachi Anu Arusa. But if that's the case, then that would be the same thing as Arusa. Okay, fine. So then this is basically the same thing as Arusa. The article points out that this is a little bit different. It's kind of a weird question because, one of them is Shomeres Yevamos and the other one is Arusa. But anyways, fine. But the Gemara answers, where was Kenyan Gomer. So the time of Nesua Uchnusa Lav Chad Milsi, but aren't Nesua and Knusa essentially the same thing, right? A woman who's married and a Yevama who has done Yibam, isn't that the same thing? They're both married to their, spouses. So Ella Nesua Didei Uchnusa Dechave. Rather, Nesua is referring to his wife, whereas Knusa is referring to the Yevama who's married. Okay, so one's talking about an Arusa, the other one's talking about Shomeres Yevamos, but it's okay if they're the same thing. Rav Pape Omar says, Rav Pape, Hi Tana hu Ditanya, that the author of this brisa is the following Tana who holds, Ein Mikanin lo la Arusa la Ashkosa kishi Arusa, av Mikanin osa la Ashkosa kishihi Nesua. That this Tana holds that, look, right, that you cannot, right, that you can, ein mekan la arusa lashkosa k'shi arusa, that you can't, that if he warns her when she's in arusa, so then he cannot give her the sota, water to drink when she's in arusa. That you can warn her when she is in arusa, and you can give her the water to drink when she is in asua. And even if that means that, he will only be sleeping with her, that he hasn't yet slept with her and this other fellow slept with her first, even if you say that would be okay. According to that Tana, he doesn't hold that the husband needs to sleep with her first. And also, even if the husband did sleep with her after they got married, this Tana also holds that it wouldn't be a problem of him needing to be clean from sin. So this Tana basically is the Tana who holds that, look, when it comes to Narusa, you do the warning when she's in Arusa, and then you give her to drink when she's in Asua, and that works. And he doesn't have to have intercourse with her before the other fellow does, and even if he has intercourse with her after the seclusion, that doesn't preclude him from being able to bring her to the Beis Hamikdash to drink this potion. So okay, fine. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amai de Gilgal, whereas Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says this is a Gilgal Shvua. A Gilgal Shvua is like a secondary kind of thing, right? It's the kind of thing where we can't make you swear about it on its own right, but once we're making you swear about something else, we can have you swear about it as well. So therefore, the way that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak understands Arusa is that, look, there actually is no situation where Arusa, in a nutshell, a betrothed woman would be able to be a sota. However, if she was warned and brought to the Beis Hamikdash to drink the potion as a nesua, and when she was married, we can then have her swear that also when she was an Arusa, she didn't have any relationship with this fellow as well. Says the Gemara, Shalach Rav Chanina Mishmed Rav Yochanan. So Rav Chanina sent in the name of Rav Yochanan also Maimer b'Yevimto, that a fellow who does Maimer with Yevamos v'yesh lo och, and he has a brother, Afilu ukoyin v'kohen posel min hatruma. Friends, what's this case? Well, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, right? Even if Reuven, Shimon, and Levi are kohanim, and we're saying even if Sarah is a Bas Kohen, and Reuven is married to Sarah, Reuven dies, and then you have Shimon and Levi. Now, let's read that again. Shalach Rav Chanina Mishmed Rav Yochanan. Rav Chanina sent the name of Rav Yochanan. Ha'oser Maimer b'Yevimto. If you have, so now Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, v'yesh lo ach, and there's also Levi. Afilu hu kohen, even if they're kohanim, v'hi kohenes, and she is a kohenes as well, posel min hatruma, she's not allowed to eat truma. Because once Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, then she becomes forbidden to Levi midirabonon, right? Midoraisa Maimer is irrelevant, but midirabonon she becomes also to Levi, but midoraisa she still is bound to Levi because she hasn't done even with anybody yet, and therefore it's like there is a there's this connection of bia that is also midirabonon, and therefore she's not allowed to eat truma. Right, meaning she has this connection to Levi, which is a bia derabonon, therefore she's not allowed to eat, which is also derabonon, therefore she's not allowed to eat truma. So afilu kohen vi kohenes posel min hatruma, even if he's a kohen and she's a kohenes, still she's not allowed to eat truma. Leman. Now, who's this according to? The Reb Meir. How can we say? We can't say that it's according to Reb Meir because Emor Damar Reb Meir Mishtameres Levi Psula Lo Achla Midoraisa. That when Reb Meir says that even after Erusin, even after Kiddushin, when let's say a divorcee to a kohen, so even after Erusin, Reb Meir says that she's not allowed to eat truma. So now, but that's because a divorcee marrying a kohen gadol is also midoraisa. Marrying a regular kohen is also midoraisa. Derabanan miyomer, but this is the case of derabanan. The only reason why Levi would be usher to Sarah is because Shimon did Maimer, which is only a derabanan construct. Reb Meir wouldn't necessarily say that she's not allowed to eat truma. Ve'ela le Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. Do you want to suggest that it's according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon? Hashtem mishtameres levi absula deoraisa achla. That's crazy because if Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon say that even in the case of when she's awaiting bia deoraisa, kilu a divorcee to a kohen, where they haven't had bia yet because they're only engaged, but they're on the the bia trajectory, and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon say she's allowed to eat truma derabanan mibaya. Obviously, then when it's only midirabanan, she'll be allowed to eat truma. So if we're saying that in this case where Shimon does Maimer and there's also Levi and she's not allowed to eat truma, it's not according to Reb Meir, it's not according to Reb Elazar, it's not according to Reb Shimon. Rather, when Ravan came, he said also but Maimer b'yevimto, that in this case where Shimon does Maimer with Sarah, everyone agrees that she'll be able to eat truma because it's only midirabanan. Yesh lo achalo. But if Levi was a chalal, now, if somebody marries a chalal, if a woman marries a chalal, she's not allowed to eat truma, because a chalal is not allowed to eat truma. So, therefore, if the brother is a chalal, then everyone agrees that she will not be able to eat truma, because since Mida Oraisa, there's still a connection with Levi, and Levi is a chalal, even Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon would say that she would not be allowed to eat truma, because when they say that she's allowed to eat truma, that's, for example, a divorcee to a kohen where she's not allowed to eat truma because she's a divorcee. But in any other case, if it's not a divorcee or somebody else who's not allowed to marry, so then she would be able to eat truma. So Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon say, look, she's allowed to eat truma. But in this case, a chalal, there's nobody who's going to marry a chalal who's going to be able to eat truma, and therefore everybody agrees that in this case she would not be allowed to eat truma. The machlokas is shenosan la get. What about a situation where Shimon gives her a get, gives Sarah a get? Rabbi Yochanan Omar ocheles, Rish Lakish Omar eina ocheles. Rabbi Yochanan says that she's allowed to eat truma. Rish Lakish says she's not allowed to eat truma. Rabbi Yochanan says she is. Where am I? Nothing like get. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ocheles. She's allowed to eat truma. Rish Lakish Amar ein ocheles. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ocheles. Afilu Reb Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says even Reb Meir would say that when Shimon gives her a get, she'd be allowed to eat truma. The Amar eino ocheles. That even according to Reb Meir, who says that by a divorcee to a kohen, she's not allowed to eat truma. Animili mishtameres levi absula de oraisa. That's only a situation where she, where like a divorcee to a kohen, that's an issur de oraisa. Aval derabanan achla, but over here it's only derabanan, right? When Shimon gives her a get, so then forget about right. So if Shimon gives her a get, so then once he gives her a get, he's not allowed to have bia with her anymore because he gave her a get, but that's only midirabanan. In the context of yibum, a get is irrelevant. You have to do chalitza. So only midirabanan she's also to him. So memela she's going to be allowed to eat truma. Rish Lakish Amar, Rish Lakish says, "Ein ocheles." She's not allowed to eat truma. Afilu Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. Even according to Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, the Ami ocheles, who say that she is allowed to eat truma. For example, by a divorcee to a kohen, that's talking about a situation where in a different case, she would be able to eat truma. For example, a non-divorcee who gets engaged to a kohen, she'd be allowed to eat truma, at least midoraisa. So then they say also, by a grusha to kohen, she can also eat truma. fine. But there's no situation where in the case of divorce, she'll be able to eat truma on his account. But maybe you'll say, well, if she's a bas kohen, then by doing this divorce, she'll be able to, right? When you have a regular case of divorce, right? You have a woman who's married, and then if they do, well, if we said that in the case of, right, that if you have a regular case of divorce, right, you have a woman who's married and then they get divorced, then she can go, if she's a bas kohen, she can go back home and she can eat truma again. So we do have a precedent for divorce enabling eating truma, but chozer is paskamine ukrova levenasha avala agidabe. Yeah, but there's a difference. When it comes to divorce, when a woman gets divorced, then she's not connected to her ex-husband in any way, and she can go home and eat truma. But in this case, it's only midrabanan. She's still shomeres yavam midoraisa, and therefore there wouldn't be a precedent for divorce enabling somebody to be able to eat truma, and therefore says Rish Lakish that she would not be able to eat truma in the case of if he gives her a get when they have to do yibum. Alright friends, we're going to stop here. That was daf Nun Ches of Masechta Yevamos. A lot of the daf talked about the concept of chuppah, right? The machlokus between Rav and Shmuel about is chuppah relevant when it comes to forbidden relationships. Rav Sheshes then brought a proof from a brisa in the context of sota to prove like Rav that chuppah is relevant in the context of forbidden relationships. Alright, and then at the end we kind of continued on this gist of the machlokas between Reb Meir and Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon about by psulis, can they eat truma or not? Friends, peace out.